Big changes rarely happen all at once. At Okami Kai Martial Arts and Fitness, they happen one class at a time.
Hi, I'm Scott.
And I'm Jennifer. We're the owners and instructors at Okami Kai.
Most parents come to us wanting the same things: confidence, focus, and resilience for their kids.
They want a place that feels supportive, not overwhelming. Somewhere their child can try, struggle a little, and learn to keep going.
We've been guiding families in our community for years, and we've seen real growth happen, one class at a time.
Kids learn to listen, try again, and work through challenges, one class at a time.
Parents get to watch confidence build through practice and not pressure, one class at a time.
Okami Kai Martial Arts and Fitness, one class at a time. Visit okamikai.com to get started.
Most nights, I wake up in the middle of them and do my best to fall back asleep. Occasionally I can drift right back off again, but that's rare. And usually things like injuries, stress, parenting, relationships, and expectations, they, keep me up for a while until I realize the next morning that I did finally go back to sleep, and now it's time to take on the day. Nothing dramatic might be happening, no emergency, no crisis, just the low hum of life getting my mind spinning. And sometimes I spend time mentally cataloging what is not working, what is missing, what used to be easier. And that is when the idea for this episode, which I'm calling the two handles, surfaced. What if the problem is not the weight of what we are carrying, but how we are carrying it? Maybe it's not about feeling good. Maybe it's about staying upright. Gratitude has a public relations issue. Most people hear the word gratitude and they picture highlight reels, captions, perfect lighting, someone telling you to just focus on the good. That version of gratitude collapses the moment life stops cooperating. If gratitude only works when everything is going well, it is not a tool, it's a decoration. And that is why a lot of people quietly give up on it. They try gratitude when life feels manageable. Then something breaks or hurts or disappoints them and gratitude feels insulting, almost offensive. Like someone handing you a motivational poster when what you really need is traction. What we rarely talk about is that gratitude has been marketed as a result instead of a practice. We treat it like the emotional dessert you earn after things go your way. Good news arrives, goals get hit, life behaves itself, and then we say thank you in that order. But life does not usually work in that order. When I was a kid, we said grace when food arrived at the table, not before it was cooked. Not while it was being prepared. We said grace after the food showed up. Looking back, that timing mattered more than I understood at the time. Gratitude came after provision. After effort, after someone had done the work of making the meal, that's when we said thanks. And without ever meaning to, that taught me a quiet rule. You give thanks once the thing you need has already arrived. And that pattern sticks with you. It shows up later in life as waiting to be grateful until the injury heals, until the relationship improves, until the stress eases, until sleep comes back, until life, behaves. At Okami Kai, we see this misunderstanding play out constantly. Students who wait to feel comfortable before training, adults who think motivation should come first, kids who believe effort only counts when results are immediate. Gratitude gets lumped into that same category, something you practice after you've earned it. And that assumption is, quite frankly, wrong. Gratitude is not the reward at the end of the process. It is what allows you to stay in the process long enough for anything to change. Over the past 2 decades, researchers have studied gratitude not as a personality trait, but as a deliberate practice. When people intentionally reflect on what they appreciate, even briefly, measurable shifts occur. Across dozens of controlled studies involving children, adults, older adults, and even patients with medical conditions, the overall pattern is remarkably steady. People who practice gratitude tend to report lower anxiety, lower depression, better sleep, stronger relationship satisfaction, and higher overall life satisfaction compared to those who do not. The exact methods differ from study to study, but the direction of the findings is consistent. What is especially interesting is that the benefit is not simply psychological. Gratitude appears to influence physiology. When you practice gratitude, you engage the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the branch responsible for rest, digestion, immune repair, and emotional regulation. It is the system that signals safety. Under chronic stress, the body spends too much time in sympathetic flight or fight mode. Heart rate stays elevated, muscles stay tight, breathing becomes shallow, cortisol remains high. Over time, this is what erodes sleep, heart health, focus, and patience. Now, gratitude helps shift that balance. It is associated with improved heart rate variability, which is one marker of a flexible and regulated nervous system, It has been linked with lower inflammation, healthier cardiovascular markers, and improved sleep quality. It does not erase stressors, but it does reduce the physiological amplification of them. In simple terms, gratitude gives the body permission to recover instead of constantly preparing for impact. And none of this, none at all, requires pretending life is good. It requires noticing what is still intact even when something is not. For me, I've had moments where everything clicked. Training felt good, family and friendships were all going well, I felt like I was doing well in my professional life. Those times exist and they are worth appreciating. I have also had stretches, though, where it felt like nothing was lining up. Business issues that kept looping in my head, relationship tensions with family or friends that never quite resolve, injuries that heal slowly and change how I move. Now that I've gotten older, I get more of them. How I sleep, how I train. Gratitude, it doesn't fix any of those things. It does not tie them up neatly or turn them into lessons on demand. What it does do is something quieter. It prevents resentment from becoming the default posture. Without gratitude, difficulty tends to narrow your field of vision. Everything becomes a problem to solve or a failure to explain. Gratitude widens that field just enough to remind you that the story is bigger than the chapter you were stuck in. There is a kind of gratitude that only appears when you are cracked open enough to see what was always there. Not because things improved, but because you stopped resisting what is. And that's not positivity, that's endurance. The Stoics had a phrase, it's the two handles. The phrase comes from Epictetus, a Stoic teacher writing in the 1st century. It sounds poetic, but he used it more as a practical teaching tool. His point was simple and blunt. Every situation presents at least two ways to be held. One way that makes it heavier and harder to live with, and another that allows it to be carried. This idea did not exist in isolation. It sat at the center of Stoic training alongside their emphasis on what is within our control and what is not. Epictetus was not interested in changing events. He was interested in changing the grip people used when facing them. Later, Stoics echoed the concept, even when they did not repeat the metaphor word for word. Marcus Aurelius wrote about choosing interpretations that do not disturb the mind. Seneca warned against adding suffering through judgment. Different language, same underlying instruction. The phrase survived because it was never meant to inspire. It was meant to be used. It gave people a way to pause and ask a better question. Not, how do I get rid of this, but how am I holding this? The idea is simple. Every situation has more than one way to be carried. One handle is heavy. It feeds resentment, self-pity, and despair. It keeps asking the same question over and over. Why is this happening to me? Gratitude is the other handle. It does not remove the weight, but it does make the burden lighter. In other words, it does not pretend the situation is fair or easy. It simply makes the load manageable. It doesn't change the facts of the situation, but it does change the relationship to them. Most of the time, we do not realize how tightly we are gripping the heavier handle until our hands start hurting, until we're exhausted, cynical, or quietly angry at things that never used to bother us. But gratitude does not mean dropping the weight. It means choosing the handle that lets you keep moving. So how does this reflect to us as martial arts and fitness class students? This shows up on the mats every single day. A white belt misses a few classes and decides they are bad at martial arts. An adult student hits a plateau and assumes they're too old, too busy, or too broken to make progress. A kid struggles emotionally and thinks quitting will solve the discomfort they are feeling. Same situation, two handles. One handle leads to frustration, self-judgment, withdrawal. The other leads to adjustment, patience, and persistence. Grit without gratitude turns into bitterness. You keep showing up, but everything feels like a grind. Gratitude without grit turns into avoidance. You tell yourself you're thankful, but you stop pushing into anything uncomfortable. Together, though, they create sustainability. They are what allows someone to keep training when progress is slow and motivation is inconsistent, which, if we're honest, is most of the time. For parents, this is where your role matters more than you think. When a child is struggling on the mats, your job is not to rescue them from their discomfort. It is there to help them find the lighter handle. Now, that might sound like acknowledging their feelings. We use a thing when we're in class we call name it to tame it, where we basically acknowledge the emotion that the child is feeling at the time. There are also times you may catch us in class where we start observing the effort and not the outcome. So they might be having difficulty doing a technique. We turn around and say, "You're doing really well. I can see you're working really hard." And we don't necessarily concentrate on the result. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get their brains to fire up so that they realize that difficulty doesn't mean failure. It means they're in the middle of learning. Sometimes the most helpful thing a parent can do is say, "I can see this is hard and I'm proud of you for staying with it." And it's hard. I know for myself, when my son was little, the number one thing I wanted to do was go and fix everything for him, do stuff for him. And I've learned over the years that that may not have been the best parenting strategy, because now as he's older, he has to problem solve by himself. He doesn't have me there all the time. When it comes to our adult students, coping in the moment looks similar. It's just quieter. When frustration spikes during training, the practice is not to notice it without making it mean something about you. It's the ability to take a breath, soften your jaw or shoulders, and remind yourself that struggle is not a verdict, it's information. That pause, even a few seconds long, is you switching handles. Not denying the difficulty, but choosing the way that it lets you keep training. Truth is, this doesn't need to be that complicated. In fact, complexity usually becomes the excuse. For less than 5 minutes a day, I want you to list 1 to 3 specific things you are grateful for. Not general, not vague, specific. For example, in the dojo, it could be the way your child stayed on the mat even after getting frustrated. If you're training, it could be the feeling of your breath settling after a hard round of jiu-jitsu or karate sparring. Quite frankly, it could just be the fact that your body showed up to class. Especially if it felt stiff or tired, you could be thankful for a small moment of connection with a training partner, or even the fact that you get that quiet moment before class where you can let your mind settle and lose all the stress from the outside world and reflect on the training that you're about to do, whether it be in the martial arts or a fitness class. Outside the dojo, it might look like noticing that your child got out the door without a meltdown, or a difficult conversation that stayed respectful, your ability to take a short walk, or a meal you did not rush through, or the simple relief of getting into bed after a long day. Once a week, express appreciation to someone directly. A message, a note, a conversation you might normally put off. Before bed, name one thing that went right that day. Not the biggest win, just something that interrupts the mental replay. The goal is not to feel better. The goal is to carry life without grinding yourself down. I am now 54 years old. I can tell you that there has been some seasons where I just sparkle. Everything's going great. And then there's been other seasons where it is really difficult to find the gratitude. And all I can say is, again, talking about this episode and how it all came to be, gratitude is not reserved for the easy times. It is for the times that teach you how to see. You do not have to feel good to give thanks. You just have to be aware of what there is to be thankful for and willing to choose the handle that can keep you going. This has been a Capsule Broadcasting production. Life is like my reusable grocery bags. The 2 handles are always there. I just have to remember to bring them in with me.